So I thought it was about time to show some of my live trading results. It's been quite a while since I've done that, and I've had a decent July, and I'm going to show off a few trades, 3 trades that I want to talk about. I'm going to do Bitcoin, Ethereum, and GBPUSD, which is my bread and butter. I want to do a full trade breakdown as well, so you can understand the reason why I got into the trades, the reason why I got out of those trades. And there are a couple of losers at the end of the video as well. I put them there because they don't really get that much engagement, but they're there in the video because there's always someone that says something like, oh, people always show off their wins, but they never show off their losses. But to show you that I'm human, I'm going to put some of those losses in just at the back, but not really going to talk about them in too much detail because they're kind of boring because they're losses, and who wants to be around that negative energy, right? I'm going to try to keep it relatively short and sweet. It's Thursday night, it's late, I have an ulcer in my mouth, and the camera battery is quite low. So let's talk about it, and then hopefully you can learn something. Here is the Ethereum trade, and if you tuned in to any of my live streams or any of the videos from the beginning of July, sort of end of June, you'll see that I talked about this level extensively, and I had talked about a trade plan for it. I also have a thread on Twitter where I called this all publicly. Let's talk about why I got into it for those that didn't see it, that weren't following along, and what happened and how I trailed my stop loss. I had an initial target of this area here at about 2,800. But when I saw that it was ripping up towards it, I decided to wait a little bit and move my TP up to about 4,000 and decided to trail my stop loss along the way, basically at every high or low. And it remained intact until around this point here. In total, this trade ran for 7.5 R, which is really nice. It was my biggest win of July. Let's just get rid of all this. Let's just go back down to the price action and repaint the story very quickly of why I got into this trade. From here, basically, we had a very big low that got taken out. This gets broken and then price retraces, and we have a supply zone at this point. And this is a really clean bit of price action, and you can see it all the time in crypto. So at this supply zone is where the selling took place to come and break this low here. If you're bearish on a retest of it, you expect price to come up and then drop down. But however, it started to make several higher highs. And I put a tweet up about this as well, saying that with the higher highs and then the higher lows that kept getting rejected at support, it looked like it had every reason to come up to this next major resistance level. One of the key strategies I have, and this is what I talk about on my YouTube channel, I have videos detailing this strategy for price action trading for beginners and price action trading for intermediates. I talk about how to look for these. So price comes up to the supply zone, and then instead of dropping, it starts ranging. So it pushes up and then retraces to this low and then puts in a high. At this point, it pushes up to give a signal of intent. That's how I read it. A signal of intent from the market that it wants to push higher. And then it drops down to the range low, puts in some wicks to the downside, can't push down, and then starts meandering up, and then a big candle to the upside again, breaking above this range, putting in a higher high with momentum, with strength, drops down, puts in a higher low, and then pushes back up to again make a higher high in the context of this range with momentum. At this point, I decided to go long. This was a really clean move up. And then overnight, thankfully, I missed out on the squeaky bum time because it came very, very close to hitting my stop loss. I had my stop loss below the range, and it was something like that. It was really, really close. This is why I always add a little bit of padding to ranges rather than having it like on the exact range low, because it can come and do this. And in all honesty, I'm not that familiar with Ethereum. I haven't had many reps on it, so I don't know its behavior. And you'll find that most charts have their own behavior. On GBPUSD, for example, this particular candle here, I would expect just to completely rip, hence why I went long. In the crypto market and on Ethereum particularly, it comes down, sweeps the lows first, probably for people like me that have got in a little bit horny and thinking it's going to rip up, takes all the lows, all the people that were waiting for the breakout, and then also catching the people out who are selling in this strength, because again, remember, we did have a trend to the downside. But then, as you can see, Bob's your uncle, it starts pushing up, and this is what I wanted to see, comes back down, retests the high of the range basically perfectly, and then bounces up, puts another high in, higher low, and then just rips for the moon. And essentially, when it got to this point here, I said to myself, if it's going to go higher, it's going to go much higher. It shouldn't really like just creep up and then come back down, in my opinion. So even though my target was at this level, I kind of, with a bit of sixth sense, expected it to go higher. So my initial target was 2.5R, and I decided what I wanted to do was wait for it to push up, see if it puts on a higher low, and then on a higher high, I will trail my stop loss below the low at my initial target at 2.5R, which is what I did, and then was able to keep trailing under every trailed stop. So again, what we could see, even though if you miss this initial move at the bottom, we have another range that got put in, and it came down, tested the lows again, puts in a higher high, puts in a higher low, and then with strength pushes up. This was a really nice point to add a continuation. And then basically I just kept trailing my stop loss under every higher low that got made. So the way I do it is you have the push up, and then you have the low that gets put in. And then once this retrace point is taken out, I'm going to move my stop loss below the higher low that gets put in. And because Ethereum was on crack and just ripping, it was a really nice technique that just basically meant that every higher low was protected. And then after hitting this top, I moved my trailed stop to below this low here, and then it ended up getting taken out. At this point here, I was pretty happy with like a 7.5R trade. It's not to be balked at, particularly when my first target was about 2.5R. So that was a nice trade. Again, just using supply and demand concepts, using range breakouts. I talk about this all the time on the channel. And yeah, that's the Ethereum trade. Hopefully I can catch another one if it retraces down here, but that's for another video and another time. Let's look at the next trade now, which is on Bitcoin for about 5.3R. Okay, here is the trade on Bitcoin that I took. And again, the tweet, just to show that I went public with it when I went long. I don't give the setups in advance. I'm not into that. Here is essentially where I went long. So let's talk about the reasons why and how I managed this move. Basically the same as the Ethereum move. Okay, first things first. Rest in peace, Uncle Phil. You'll have to ignore the purple and the blue lines because that's my current trade that I'm in. And I trade Bitcoin and GBPUSD on my personal account. I also do all my trading on What Exchange for crypto, but at that time I hadn't funded my account enough and I was all in on that Ethereum trade on that account. Yeah, that's why I've jumped over as MetaTrader basically, but I wanted to explain it. But anyway, what had happened, we were in a clear uptrend and we're in a big range, and this was the range high. And what had happened is price put this in, dropped, took out all of this support in a similar way to what we saw on my Ethereum trade, came down, pushed up to the range high, came down once again and took out the support, but then pushed up to this supply zone here, and then did kind of the same as what Ethereum did, where it flipped it and then started going sideways. What happened next, if I just zoom in, price came down to test this support level, pushed up and made a new high. And not only did it make a new high in the concept of here, but it also took out this previous high and was at this level here at a supply zone, which got broken eventually. But it reacted and then bounced off of this zone. Now, again, if you watch any of my videos or you come to my live streams, I talk about these decision points. These are the areas on the chart where the buying took place to take out previous key levels. These are really important levels. And this, after a bounce from support, instead of dropping back down, it puts in this continuation pattern, takes out the highs, comes down, bounces from it, puts it another high, another higher low, and then it put in this little range here. And then when it broke out of it, that's when I went long. It's just one of those things. Sometimes, even though the technical pattern is there, if you've got enough experience with these types of patterns, and this chart in particular, I've been watching Bitcoin solidly for like 8 years. It's always on my screen pretty much. You kind of feel it in your balls when it's going to start moving, and it moved really quickly straight after. yeah, it was not really that difficult of a trade after that, because it maybe had like one little dip down and then started pushing up. And then again, in the same way like I talked about in the previous trade, it puts in the high, puts in the low, and then in a higher high, I'd started to trail my stop loss below the higher low that kept getting put in. But here there was like just a complete rip up, puts in this low at this point, and then it hit my TP, which I had at about 123,000, I believe. Let's have a look again. Should be a bit more professional and know what it was. 120,600-ish, which was about here. And that's not a bad exit, really, is it? That was a pretty good exit, to be fair. When price has done this, I knew it was in for a correction. I just kind of got lucky with it because, you know, I was particularly thinking about 125,000, nice big round number. But I pulled out at about 120,600, like I just said, and then avoided all of this chop, essentially. And now it's come back down. Now it's putting in the exact pattern which I talked about in the previous video on Monday, talking about the crypto market review. And now it's pushing up again. So hopefully this is round 2 and this is going to be another great trade. But that is why I took the Bitcoin trade. And to be honest, it's probably one of the easiest trades I've taken all year, if not the easiest, because this is just literally every trader's dream. So that was about 5.3R in the end. And then I did take a loss, which I'm going to talk about at the end. A couple of losses in this chop, trying to get a continuation a little bit too early. In all, for July, it ends up at about 3.7R, I think it was, for Bitcoin, even though I did take this 5.3R trade. So now let's talk about GBPUSD, and then we can end this video. Here is my winning trade on GBPUSD. It's a 2R trade. I got taken out on a trailing stop, but what you'll probably see is a bit of a pattern in the type of pattern I trade and the reasons why I take these trades. So I'm just going to run through that now on the chart so we can understand things a little bit more. What we have is a very defined and clear and obvious uptrend. We have a high that gets taken out at this point, and then a range gets put in, or a demand zone, if you like. The price pushes up, retraces to put in a higher low. In the context of the trend, it's a higher low, but it fakes this low and then pushes up, comes back down after some choppy period, and then it starts testing the top of the range. And at this point, I'm starting to think it's going to push up. And GBPUSD is my bread and butter. I trade this on M1 every single day. I'm always looking at this chart as well. If I just remove that here, what happens is it comes down, bounces kind of off this level as well. There's a lot of support here. It comes down, puts in this retrace high, and then puts in this low, pushes up to create a high high above this, drops down, puts in a higher low, tries to push up, tries to push down, puts in another higher low, and then with strength pushes to the upside, and with a lot of momentum giving me the signal that it wants to push up. Again, like Ethereum, I got in a little bit too early, I got a little bit too horny for it. Then it starts pushing back down into the range, bounces and saves my ass, and then just completely rips up. Similar to the Bitcoin trade. This is perfect. Like, this is the exact thing you want to see when you're watching price tumble down to your stop loss within about 5 minutes of entering. And then in a similar way to the other trades, I just trailed my stop down past the higher lows. I did have a little mistake in this one, which we'll talk about in a sec. And once price had taken out this high here, it puts in a higher low, comes up to put a higher high in, and this is where I move my stop loss below here. And I'm thinking when it is tumbling back down, similar to here, like my pants are going a little bit hot, but then it rips back up and happy days, comes back down, bounces off support once again, and I'm trailing my stop at this point here below this low. And then this is a really big support area at this point. Now, here's where the mistake was made, because what I should have done once price had got to this high is put my stop below this point. However, I didn't. I put it down below this point. It should have been here, and I probably would have got away with about a 3R trade at this point. but it comes down, takes me out here for just over 2R. It was on the day, and then comes back down, and then, yeah, just, I don't want to be in the rest of that for the day. So yeah, that was my 2R win on GBPUSD. There are very similar things between all of those trades in terms of the entry, in terms of the trade management, in terms of this trailing stop method. It did miss my TP. I did have it a bit higher on this trade because I was going for about 4.5R. I thought with all the crypto trades and everything, 'tis the season, but ended up getting a 2R trade, which I'm happy enough with as it happened. So yeah, some nice winning trades for July. I'm pretty happy with them, and you know, all the reps count. But of course, there were losing trades. I am going to show them, but I'm not going to go into detail with them because, like I said, it's boring. So here's my first loss on Bitcoin. This is what I talked about before. I had thought that it was going to push up after this low. I was pretty bullish on this. It tried to push up, came back down, and then started pushing up above this original range high, and then I ended up getting taken out. I did have another loss somewhere in here. I took a trade way too early in hindsight. And then it came back down, and I'd moved my stop to just below this low, and it ended up getting tagged for like 0.6R is what it is. And then here's a trade that lost on GBPUSD, pushed up after a downtrend, and I thought it was kind of exhausted at this point. It put in a double top, dropped down below local support, retested the level, and then put in a lower low. I went short and exited at about 0.5R actually, because you can see my stop loss was here. And then, yeah, that's what happened. So if you enjoyed this content, let me know. If you want to see more of me doing trade breakdowns and showing you off more of my trades, let me know in the comments below. If you've got any questions on any of this as well, please let me know and I will answer them. But there are multiple links in the description of this video for my price action video series to show you why and how I enter, how I define ranges, how I define key levels, and also the tweet threads for everything. I don't have any losers on Ethereum for July. One trade, one win, 100% strike rate. Should probably retire now, right? So yeah, anyway, your next video is here. Bye.